Over this 8-week course, the idea of leadership, as well as its contributing attributes, have been discussed at length. At the very beginning, we were asked how we ourselves would define leadership. In doing so, I compared facets of Christ's leadership in his life and ministry. Leadership, in essence, was the imitation of Christ in leadership roles, practicing humility, care, leading by example, inspiring others, as well as encouraging others. I still hold to this perspective, but feel that I have a better informed and established outlook than I did prior to this class. It is amazing to have read Koos and Posner's work, seeing how their model advises action that runs remarkably parallel to a biblical understanding of leadership. That said, I feel that Koos and Posner have deepened my biblical understanding of what it means to be a leader, broadening it to a more practical view. Additionally, my interview with Miss Baker provided a real individual's philosophy to compare to the model we have been studying, which forced myself to think deeply regarding the similarities and differences. Overall, I wouldn't necessarily depart from how I thought of leadership before, but there is now an additional wisdom and specificity to describe the concepts. To begin with, one of my assertions at the beginning of the class was the necessity of humility for one to be a good leader. Two things that draw my attention is Miss Baker's as well as Koos and Posner's perspective on care. Miss Baker mentioned during the interview that caring for those in her organization is a tenet of leadership. She then quoted the golden rule as a standard to live by, whether in relation to a client or employee. Living in a way that treats others as more important than oneself invariably requires a large degree of humility, as living by this golden rule and caring for individuals is going to necessitate action that may not always be glamorous or directly self-benefiting. In their book, Koos and Posner record a conversation between themselves, trying to identify motive for leadership and what the motive is behind leadership. Posner says that he thinks leadership begins with caring. He says, quote, "What do you care enough about to see if it could be any better?" Unquote. This foundational recognition builds into a broad principle associated with leadership throughout the book. A person must care about an issue to make change. They must care about the people the change affects. Then they must care for their team who actually enacts the change. This attention to care shows that a leader is invested in their group, and Miss Baker specifically said that showing care and appreciation is a part of her business model when it comes to clientele and employees. This practical outworking of a relatively abstract principle is inspirational for myself, and seeing it in the real world application is an encouraging confirmation of something that I try to foster within myself. Additionally, Koos and Posner, in their first chapter, discuss modeling the way, or in other words, setting an example. One section they dedicate some time to is building and affirming shared values. They say that, quote, "People are more loyal and committed when they believe that their values, your values, and the values of the organization are aligned." I think that you can ask most people out there what they think a part of leadership is, and most will give some rendition of leading by example. This specification of building and affirming shared values, though, is a development in my own understanding at the very least. It makes sense too, particularly in light of the interview with Miss Baker. For instance, she is insistent that honesty and keeping one's word be a part of her company culture. She facilitates this throughout her workplace, and dishonesty is not welcome, period. This principled position is expressed at every interview of any potential employee, and it is important to Miss Baker that they share similar principles. If they didn't, then Miss Baker would have difficulty leading them, as their worldviews would not align, nor would their goals in life, or at the very least, how to achieve said goals. As such, this expression of values and shared understanding is vital to the success of any organization and also any leader that desires to enact change with the help of a team. Lastly, inspiring a shared vision also caught my attention for a few reasons. I can't say that I thought of it as a part of leadership necessarily, so this new revelation was quite intriguing. The book and other reading materials assigned go into explaining the importance of developing a sense of meaningful purpose within a group, which in turn motivates productive action. It provides meaning, so to speak, and Miss Baker experienced a little bit of this realization with her daughter, as when they did not share a similar vision and when they failed to coordinate together to inspire a shared one, it resulted in a fracturing of not just business but also a personal relationship. To reorient, though, the reason that it caught my attention largely was seeing a lack of this in my own workplace. I am sure that everyone has workplace politics. However, my workplace seems particularly dysfunctional at times. There is a lot of conflict between the line workers and management. And after having interviewed Miss Baker and after reading Kuz and Posner's book, I think a lack of inspiring a shared vision may be a part of the problem. For context, I work in the air traffic control facilities that are run by the Air National Guard Squadron here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Most military units have specified and dedicated purpose. However, other than running the civilian airport in Cheyenne, Wyoming, a lot of members in the unit seem to lack that meaningful purpose. I admit it's a little difficult to explain with this specific situation. However, ultimately I concluded that if I'm going to contribute at all to change in my workplace for the better, this understanding of inspiring a shared vision is a necessity. At the beginning of this course, I was a bit skeptical as to a book on leadership that wasn't necessarily rooted in Christian worldview. It has been of particular interest to uncover the fact that these two gentlemen writing the book hit the nail on the head, as far as I can tell, probably unknowingly also delivered a model of leadership that is designed to succeed because it reflects the ultimate leadership success. Reading their book helped me to understand Miss Baker's position much better. The interview and book in tandem provided a deeper understanding of who Christ is as a leader and who we are in him. Overall, I feel as if I've been well equipped, more so now, to fulfill callings that the Lord will lead me to. Inevitably, this will result in possessing positions of leadership, ones in which I hope to model Kuz and Posner, which in partnership with God will glorify him and be beneficial for myself as well as others.